Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a new mic and a 21 Algeth'ar's Academy. For the week cycle, we are Tyrannical, Spiteful, and Quaking. And before we get going here, I want to thank everyone new who's tuned into my channel. I really appreciate the feedback and the interactions and the community, so thank you for tuning in. And just to give you guys a fun fact about me, if you don't know this already, by day, my name is William Brandon, and I'm a quite accomplished fire performer. So if you don't know what that is, I spin a rope dart, which is a 10-foot rope with a ball on the end, and I spin it around in kind of like a dancey manner, but it's based in martial arts. And you may have seen me performing on The Ellen Show. I was on America's Got Talent last year. This is something I've been doing for a while, and I've kind of performed all over the country. Something I'm very passionate about. It was 5 or 6 years ago, I set out on a journey to create a one-of-a-kind dance portfolio, and along the way I kind of got discovered, and one thing led to the next, and it's something I'm really proud about. So if you want to know a little bit more about me and what I do with fire, please check out my website, williambrandon.com. You can find my America's Got Talent audition and my portfolio. So anyway, that's enough about me. Let's get over to the key. I'm really excited to show you guys the improvements I've had since last week. Now that I've had a week to play with things, and after watching myself back in the Shadow Moon Burial Ground, I was really able to pinpoint where my mistakes were, and very happy to report that I'm pretty much not making those mistakes anymore at all. And it had to do with an improper ramp, and it had to do with missing cooldowns within my Shadow Covenant window. But first, I want to go ahead and clear and let everyone know that my PI uptime in this dungeon sucked. My PI I had marked up here next to my Shadow Word Death. I don't think that's the best place for it anymore. Plus, I'd been moving it all around, all over the place. Oh, sorry, Yasmin. I was kind of at a disadvantage with it not being in the same place. But I don't quite look at this as a combat spell, so I've pulled it out of my bars again. It's down here. I think that's actually helped me cast it better now. But I'm going to have to say hello to him in a second. But the biggest thing I wanted to report is not only am I nailing my rotation now, which again, a minimum for a solid rotation is 4 torments. Most importantly, 2 large penance procs. Not only am I doing that very consistently, I've started learning and discovering ways where I can maximize that window further, and that's with a 5th torment. So pretty much I'm noticing 60 to 75% of the pulls, there is an opportunity for a 5th torment, and that's going to be with maximizing on your double Shadow Word Death. And the next question from there is like, how do we do that? So if anyone uses my KUI profile, my enemy colors, the system is exactly like it was, but I've kind of edited it a little bit to favor our new build better. So I had a lot of dark gray mobs listed here. I put them all back to a system of shades of red. So we have a dark red, meaning big meanie, and we have a medium red, meaning regular meanie. And then as the third option, when I'm looking at a battlefield, I have my non-targeted, I used to have it at like a 30%, and now it's up to a 55%. And the big change here is I needed to see them more, whereas I didn't used to in the past, but I need to see them more now because this is where we will pick up that 5th torment. So anyone who's on this list will be full opacity. Our lesser mobs will be able to see them better at about 55% opacity, and that's where we will pick up our 5th torments. So a standard ramp looks like at least 1 dot followed by a penance, and you started toning the group. And the biggest importance in a ramp, if you're really trying to maximize your window, is gaining a harsh discipline proc with a +1. And that's because we want 2 dark reprimands, large dark reprimands, in our long schism window. So when you have this 5 to 6 second ramp window followed by a 15-second DPS window, at that point in the pull, there's likely to be someone in execute range And pulling their opacity up a little bit higher will just help you see them and really highlight your opportunities to get that 5th torment. And the reason I brought all of my enemies back to a shade of red is I really want this execute range color of white to stand out without any doubt. So anyway, that's my new system for maximizing my torment, and we'll see a lot of examples of that here. And then just again, before we get going, I want to kind of state the optimal rotation, or the minimums within a Shadow Covenant window. And that is going to be 4 torments and, very importantly, 2 large dark reprimands. And there is a rigid part of our rotation, and that is the opener, Schism, and then next in line you have to cast Mind Blast followed by Penance. And we have to put those first in order to put them on cooldown in order to get them again. But after that, you have quite a bit of freedom to weave whatever spells you want. We have some spells that are cast, some are instant. I think it's really important to pay attention to the differences there. And if it's a moment of stillness, reach for a cast spell and kind of bank your instant cast spells for when you're likely to have to move. And on that note, that being said, one thing I've discovered about Shadow Word Death as I've been playing with it is it's absolutely priority to get within your Shadow Covenant window. Your Mindbender window, well, both of them. But the further you can push it to the back of your window, the better. And that's for 2 reasons. So it absolutely needs to hit while the Mindbender's out, but the more you can delay it, it's going to act as a spell you can cast while moving, so that's really important. And also, the further you delay it, the higher the chance of a mob falling into execute range. And that is your opportunity for the 5th torment. So using a nameplate system that can really highlight those ranges, super important and super fun to get that 5th torment. It's a lot more HPS, it's a lot more DPS, and I think that's really how you're going to start seeing the competitive side of Discipline come out. And then just one last little caveat before we clip over to the video. Shadow Covenant is 15 seconds, which is a pretty long window to not refresh any atonements, and especially if it's a moment in combat where you're using Shadow Covenant for healing. It's really important after your first penance to weave in a Radiance. So I do think very strictly we have to Schism, Mind Blast, Penance, but at that point you get a lot of freedom, a lot of things open up, and that is where you could recast your atonements with Radiance. And I think putting it right after Penance, the atonements will last through the window. So that's a really good place to put it. And you really just have to favor your Mind Blast always. What I'm noticing, it doesn't matter if you're in a window or not in a window. Mind Blast needs to roll 100% of the time. And as soon as you cast Schism, it has to be your first spell in order to get the 3rd, followed by Penance has to be your 2nd spell in order to get the 2nd. And I will say, if I say Penance instead of Dark Reprimand, I'm trying to save syllables. Penance proc sounds better. It just kind of rolls off the tongue better. If I say Penance, I mean Dark Reprimand. We have to get 2 of them in our window to fully maximize. And then the last little thing I guess I want to add is I'm not trying to cast Mind Blast or Death without at least 6 seconds of dot, especially if it's my DPS window. One thing you will have to do within your window is cast a dot, but there's quite a bit of freedom of where you cast that as well. So after your Mind Blast Penance, you have enough time for 1 more torment before you have to cast dot. But one thing I'm noticing is even if the dot falls off, I might reach for Mind Games before I refresh the dot. And then I'll do like my 2nd and 3rd Mind Blast. There's a lot of wiggle room to play around with the order of spells. But the biggest importance of your DPS window is not having downtime with casting. So with whatever order you're playing your spells, really try and minimize on the downtime and really try and maximize with that 5th torment. So if anyone has any questions about things, please let me know. I love the comment section. I think it's really fun interacting. And I can talk about things more specifically based on your questions versus just whatever I'm rambling about in these videos. So that is everything I'm going to say. Let's go ahead and clip over. All right, so here we go. Off the top, I always encourage to plan where your PIs are going to go. And for a composition like this, anyone is just about as good as the next. We had a stellar group. Everyone did their job fully. And I've already said that I don't play my PIs well here anyway, so we're just not going to talk about it. But if you're wondering about my action bars in the center of my screen, those are just action bars. That's not a weak aura set or anything like that. I use the add-on called Dominoes. There's a lot of really simple ways to customize the size of your bars. And I think that's really all I need to build this whole HUD. And I've tried to design it in such a way that the varying sizes are there to help guide my eyes to what I need to see. And with that in mind, that's why I have Schism, Shadow Covenant, and Mindbender right in the middle. So that is the big cadence of my play. And I need to have all three available to go into my window successfully. And that being said, the reason I have a glow on all of these buttons is because I used to go into the window with one of them missing, one or two of them missing. So I've put them central to help me see them better, and I've put a glow on them because it's kind of like a small system where I need all of them to glow before I'm ready. And for the same reason, that's why Penance is right next to it, because it has to glow too. So again, before we get going, just talking about rotation, I do think as an ideal true opener, you open with your Mindbender. The mechanics of its duration extension will have it last throughout your DPS window, even when cast first. So I think putting him first is the better thing to do. You're not going to get any extra torments by casting him last. And as soon as you enter into your Schism window, we can't afford a dead global of casting the Mindbender. It's better if he's already out for the most part. And then the last thing I'll say about rotation, so with Mindbender as our opener, we follow that with Shadow Covenant, followed by Schism, followed by Mind Blast, followed by Penance. And if you can get those 5 spells out of the way, your ramp will really be set for success. And even though this is Tyrannical, I vote Haste. I think even DPS can vote Haste if they would like. As a Disc Priest, I feel like what I bring is versatility anyway. So you take the haste, do the damage. I worry about the DR. So here we go. First pack. Open with the dot and some atonements. There is our KUI and Paladin. I'm ramping my Harsh Discipline, preparing for my Mindbender. Off of a fresh dot, Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. I prioritize Stars. I pick out a 5th Torment off of an Execute range. And that was a really good opener. So I ramped perfectly. I did get spell locked there at the end, but I got all 5 of my Torments and had my 2nd Penance proc farmed properly. So that's exactly what you want to aim for. Alright, so going into next pull. So Shadow Covenant is 30 seconds, Mindbender is natively a minute. I think the goal there is to have those line up. And you'll also see in party, I can see that attack's going. Great place to put a shield, especially having 4-piece. Pretty much all of our single shields are going to be buffed, so it's a great place to use it, and you can see those things. But here we go, Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. And again, here I favor Divine Star at the top. That is going to be our most valuable spell in that moment. Marked by lightning. And I did not get an Execute 5th Torment. There was not an opportunity, but I did get 4.
5, 4, 3.
And I don't think I cast another Mindbender here. The pull's too far over, so I think I'm just banking. I'm just preparing for the next pull. One good strategy as you're exiting one pull is to try and bank your Penance proc. Have it ready as you go into the next pull. So here you'll notice the battle axes are a dark red. They have the most health. That is a good place for me to focus cleave. And I open with a barrier. This is just 10 seconds to help me ramp my Harsh Discipline, ramp dots, and ramp atonements. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, had to fight for that one. Divine Star for the AoE. And I thought I picked up my 5th Torment there, but I guess it was on cooldown. But I got all 4 Torments. There was my 2nd Penance proc. Another very successful win. And you can always kind of like devolve into Holy Nova after a pull like that. I still think it's a good spell. And then you'll see here right at the tail end of the pull, I'm just banking my Harsh Discipline for the next pull. I guess I wasn't, I dropped it. This is my opener, a couple of dots, banking my Harsh Discipline. On a fresh dot, fresh atonements, Mindbender, Shadow Covenant Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. Yeah, at this point there's a lot of freedom. Worked in my Divine Star at the top because it's high priority for DPS. So I think I picked up my 5th Torment there off of an execute range, but it put me in a precarious spot and pushed me low health. So thankfully we have a Paladin that helps pick up those spikes. And you don't see it here, but starting in next key, I think we're going to have a lot more synergy. Yasmin and I this morning probably spent an hour or so developing his bars to kind of see things through my eyes. And the main problem is we were overlapping our spells a lot. I think this is a system that will help us be more efficient. So ramping Harsh Discipline. There is our PI on our Druid friend. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant Schism, Mind Blast Penance. There is our 4th death. And the nice thing about PI Lust windows, it's really easy to pick up a 5th Torment even without execute range. And for this fight, the main cadence is going to be his resource bar. So it's really important to keep an eye on it, and that is our Rapture Q. As he's approaching 100%, you want to Rapture. And the ideal Rapture will cover the fissure, and give you time to refresh shields after the attack. And that's exactly what we did there. So we're trying to not overlap mechanics. That's something the tank is doing with absorbing the orbs. But we do get a nasty overlap coming up. And I saw it coming, so I pain sup myself. I think it is very valid to look at pain sup as a personal defensive. And I think I could have saved a Druid there if I didn't slightly hesitate with that penance proc sent defensively. Could have saved him, wish I had saved him, but we had a death due to a couple missed mechanics there. We had one orb hit the boss, and we had bombs overlap with the fusion. What's that spell? Fissure? Whatever it is. So I think that was a good Shadow Covenant. I got lost in my thought. Too high to note the difference. Yeah, so in a case like this, our tank now will see my atonements, and where the mage fell unatoned, he's going to be prioritizing his heals that direction. So here we go. I think I'm ramping for my last Mindbender. Building up my Harsh Discipline to a proc +1. Now I go into a Rapture first. So that was a really good call to go into Rapture. Our tank needed a little help. He was calling in Discord, and we had bombs go out. So we had our Harsh Discipline locked and loaded. There is our Mindbender, Shadow Covenant Schism, Mind Blast Penance. And I really had to fight for that one. We had a Quaking coming on, but it did not interrupt my rotation, and we polished off the boss. So I am noticing when I watch these back, my Mindbender uptime is a little higher than I would like, but I think holding a little uptime is probably fine, trying to just line up your Mindbender with the appropriate places. But I do think on Vexamus there was one nasty overlap where we also had an orb hit the boss. That would have been a great place where I should have been running Mindbender and I think I had him available. But that's a tricky boss. Okay, here we go. We have big trash pull. I have the bigger enemies stand out as a dark red. I'm trying to dot them. Even the lesser enemies here are going to last a while. So I'm trying to get a handful of dots out. Mainly putting dots on the bigger ones, running penance when it's available. And I'm ramping to my first Mindbender. Here we go. Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. I barely got that one in because of the move mechanic. But again, I'll say the most important part of that sequence is being able to put your Schism and Mind Blast next to each other in sequence.
4,
Have to run that first Mind Blast
2,
immediately, and running 2 casts together is kind of the tricky part. But so on the back side of a Shadow Covenant window is never a bad idea for a Rapture. When you're coming out of that window, you're likely to have atonements falling off. You will be having less output. So a Rapture is a really nice way to re-atone the group, get a little coverage, buy a little time for your next Mindbender. And I've talked about this I think in every video, but as a Disc Priest, I really vote Grid 2 as the only option out there that I know of that maximizes that shows absorb values in the best way. And if you're any other spec healer, it probably doesn't matter, but being that we have Rapture in our book, I think it's really important we see all of those growing from the left to the right, kind of following the same function in order to compare them. So what I'm getting at, if you don't understand, a shield from Rapture can be a regular or a crit. Those are our 2 options. But we have more time, more globals within Rapture than just 5. So if we really want to maximize on the absorbs, we have a few extra shields we can dole out, and it's really important to see if someone is missing an absorb, or has a depleted absorb, or has a crit absorb. So if someone has a crit on them, you don't want to shield them again, because you open the possibility for them losing the higher value. So you always want to look for your low value shields, refreshing them first. And it really depends on the pull if I prioritize myself and DPS over the tank. But some pulls you might want to prioritize the tank first to help maximize that window. Anyway, here we go. So we have the tree boss. I'm not quite sure the best rotation of spells here just yet, but I do open with my Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. So I put my first rotation here just to get it rolling, just to get some free DPS on the boss while nothing's happening. And right here I opt for my DPS potion. So there is not much of a threat here, and I don't think I was quite just trying to pad meters, but using the DPS potion there helped us push that phase, and I'm anticipating Shadow Covenant for when they animate, so I think that's fine. And one thing we noticed is that Splinter Bark is hurting a lot more than it used to, so we think that changed, and in hindsight, I think playing a different rotation of spells there is better. Anyway, for this first burst forth, I did pre-Rapture the group for coverage, and I do not have Harsh Discipline, but it is not too important. I go straight into my Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism. I favored Divine Star at the top before the enemies died, and I also prioritized my Torment spells. So here in this window, I just want to Holy Nova, but I also want to start building up my Harsh Discipline. So it's kind of a back and forth between Smite, Holy Nova, Mind Blast, Holy Nova. And for this one, I kind of learned my lesson. I laid a barrier just to ease the transition. And you'll notice my Ancient Branch, I turned green with a little glow effect. I do think that's the best way to see him, and it's never a bad idea to give him a little extra damage on Tyrannical weeks. So for this, I walled. We have no externals, but we do have a Mindbender. So Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism. Nope, I dropped Schism and we're going straight for the Torment. So I dropped Schism. I thought I did it on purpose, but in looking back on it, I think I did that on accident. But we still got good value off the Divine Star. We got great value on the Torments. But there was some DPS missed. So here's our off phase. I'm trying to go into a Rapture here, I believe.
By lightning.
So I Flash Heal Radiance into Rapture. When I Flash Heal as my opener to Q my DR, and then I follow that up with a Radiance
4, 3,
to buff my Rapture by my Mastery. So here's a Shadow Covenant window. Divine Stars high priority while they're alive. I'm not casting it. I think I was a little bit stressed here, and I missed the Divine Star. But one more little caveat about Rapture, this boss is about over. Rapture is no good on an ally with no health. So the best Rapture will be capping a full health bar, which is one reason why opening with a Radiance is a good idea. It helps pad the health meters just a little bit before you put the shields on, and it's also going to buff your Rapture by your Mastery. So that's a really good tip. So going into this next boss, so the tree boss could have been better. I don't think it was that bad. I could have definitely played it better, but I was stressed out and I'm still new to this. But so you might have heard it by now, but I have a weak aura that highlights targeted spells, and this guy has a really heavy tank slam on the tank. Highlighted, I'll do it in a second, there. So that is a really great opportunity to cast a shield.
5,
Right now,
4,
a 4-piece,
3.
my shields can crit at 100,000, which will pretty much make those tank slams just not even hit. And I don't think I got but maybe 1 or 2 of them, but the optimal shield here is before the hit, but I think even if you shield after the hit, yeah, right there, that was a slight miss. Even if you shield after the hit, I think it still adds a very similar amount of value because it's buying the tank a fraction of a second to stabilize himself. So I think seeing those mechanics is really important. I think getting ahead of them is best, but being able to see them and cast a shield there really maximizes on your 4-piece, really maximizes on your build and your strengths. So for this Shadow Covenant, I dropped Schism, not important, and I'm just trying to get in my Torment spells. And I think I might have been a little hasty there. I could have picked up an extra Torment, but I think I only got 3. I don't know what happened there. So on a pull like this, I do not have Mindbender yet. So it's just some good old Holy DPS. I think Holy Nova's just fine. It does pretty good for the time being. So we have our Mindbender, but I don't think I'm going to use it on the Shades. Divine Star. And one thing I'll add about Divine Star is I use it very situationally. Like, let's say I'm in a Shadow Covenant window, and I'm 1 cast away from a Harsh Discipline proc. I'll often drop the Divine Star in favor of something like Smite or Solace, just to get that proc. And it is very situational. I would say if it's an AoE play, I would not drop the Star, ideally. But if it was a single target fight, dropping the Star for an extra Harsh Discipline, I think, is the right call. Tank got punted there. But here's our window. Divine Star at the top. Favoring my Torment spells. I picked up my 5th Torment there with a nice execute grab. And I got both Penance procs. So that was an excellent window. And I will say, I'll call myself out too, I could be playing my shield more, and I am working on it. So, especially since I have a 4-piece now, and I have so many systems in place to monitor where incoming damage is, and I take Crystalline Reflection as a troll, I should play it more. I will say there's a whole argument out there for playing Vampiric Embrace. I know other people do it, and even my tank and I have had conversations about me taking it, but I don't think it's necessary. Right now, we've not really broken into 22s, but in 21s, I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's necessary either in higher keys, but jury's still out. But right now I play Crystalline Reflection. I really like being able to return damage there and have it not be a total DPS loss. But so anyway, on this guy we have tank attacks again coming from the targeted spells weak aura. It's really nice if you can shield those off, and it's that white dotted line right there. PI on the Druid. Here's our first Shadow Covenant. So that was, we don't think we wanted Lust at the top, but that's what happened. So we just went with it. So I had Lust and PI. And for a Shadow Covenant Mindbender window with all that haste, we can get extra torments. And I'd have to count. If anyone wants to count that for me, that'd be great. But I think it's one extra torment. It might be two extra torments. And that's from the Mind Blast. So the plan for this fight is we will take up to 4 stacks, and that is where we've predetermined my Rapture. And that was another really good Covenant. Got everything I needed. The biggest thing is making sure you get that second Dark Reprimand. But anyway, here comes the Deafening Screech. That's all on track with Bigwigs. The group has full shields, which really made a difference. There's an Innervate a little bit late, but at least he tried.
5, 4, 3.
So in a case like this, I have Mindbender, but I am waiting a moment just to have it coincide with the DPS of the Screech. And it's never a bad idea to get into your window early. It is a pretty long window. Yeah, so like right there, my Mindbender was already out for 3 or 4 seconds. But I only need basically one cast to get the heals I need. So cast him early so there's no delay. Full coverage. And that was a really nice peck. I was able to shield off. I think the best way to use shield here is try and get all of them. But even getting some of them makes a real big difference for our tank. So here's a Mindbender for recovery, I think. Okay, I didn't get it out in time, so I think I'm delaying for the next. Ramping my Harsh Discipline.
5, 4, 3.
Mindbender, Shadow
2.
Covenant, Schism. Yikes, had to move a little bit. I'm also short 1 on Harsh Discipline. Let's see if I get that second proc. Getting my Torment spells out. No, I dropped that second proc. So that's what it looks like when you are short on Harsh Discipline entry. You end up missing procs. So it was a really good thing I walled there because I kind of lost track of our cadence. Ouch. So everyone here saw that. I got stuck on that little hump and then I jumped through the air. But I lost track on our cadence, and that was our second Rapture Q. We had a stack of 4. And I missed the Rapture, but thankfully no one died. But a quick res from Yasmin, and I opened with a Rapture just to recover. And those also covered his pets. So I'm not sure, I have to watch this back. But I think I grabbed 1 or 2 of his pets. That seems weird. Outside of Rapture. It's I think it's really pro if you can spot where those casts are coming in and get ahead of them. It's a lot easier to recover health that's not ever lost. I think that makes sense. It's just better when people don't spike low, is what I'm saying. And on a Tyrannical boss like that, things can get spiky. But I think I at least got one outside of Rapture. It was my goal to get more, and it's my goal in all keys to get more like that, but not my best play there. And developers, if you're watching, that's a really good example where Revel and Purity did not spread my dot. So PI on the Paladin, I think he likes those. Harsh Discipline is almost ready. Ramping some atonements, fresh dot. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. And for a pull like this, I favor Divine Star at the very top of my window just to make sure I get all of its value. And there was no 5th Torment here, no one hit execute range. But I did get 2 Pin Eyes and all 4 opponents. And you'll also see, center of my screen, I pull in a red cast bar for certain things. Those are casts that my Fear Bomb can break. So that's kind of my small system I've implemented for maximizing my Fear Bomb. Something like Arcane Missiles, I can interrupt. And there are a handful of spells throughout our keys right now that can really break a pull, and that my Fear Bomb can prevent.
5,
so it is nice to have
4,
a small system,
3,
if nothing else,
2.
to be able to play your spell right. So open the barrier, again this is just helping my ramp. Getting dots out, building my Harsh Discipline, refresh atonements, Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. Then I favor Divine Star at the top just for AoE. Really making sure to spam Mind Blast when it's available. Came in with a Fear Bomb. I think in casts like this, in pulls like this, there are a lot of casts. So, I think even random Fear Bomb drops are beneficial. So things are getting a little bit out of hand, we're getting separated. So I go into a defensive play, paints up on the teeth and Rapture. And that's just to help us settle in, atone the group, gives me a moment to dot, ramp my Harsh Discipline.
5, 4.
And here we have, let's see, yep, Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, spam for Mind Blast, Penance. And here's where I'm delaying my Shadow of Death. And there I picked out my 5th Torment. And I still got my 2nd Penance. So that was a really good example of a Shadow Covenant. You'll notice I delayed my Shadow of Death, which opened the door to pick up a 5th Torment. And I think right there too, since I've watched this back, I know what happened. I was casting Irradiance, which I think is all the group needed, but I accidentally stepped, which canceled the cast, and it put everyone in a really vulnerable spot. But thankfully we had some off heals, thankfully we recovered, no deaths. We're doing great on time. And here is my last Shadow Covenant before boss. And if anyone's wondering, my little tracker for Shadow Fiend, Mindbender, which I bring front and center,
4,
that is just the native display.
2.
It's usually hooked to your player frame, but I can't see it when it's down there. I really need it front and center to be able to maximize that spell. I don't know why by default I don't have the option to move that, but I found a bootleg version of Move Anything online, which I'm so happy I found it because it let me move that little button. And the reason it's important to use the native UI for that display is there is no in-game API for the timing. So there will not be a WeakR that does it better than default. So anyway, as an opening here, we have just enough time for one round of Mindbender before the second mechanic. And you don't want your window to overlap with that second mechanic. You're going to have a lot of loss. But we have just enough time when the fight starts to get one round in. And also in this fight, we have these bombs go out. These are Tyrannical bombs. It is a great place to place her shields. And that is a huge shield. So I think that was at least 100k crit shield. And that bomb still took me to about 50% health. And what it looked like is if I hadn't shielded myself, that would have been a death. Because right after the bomb went off, I was hit with something else from the dragon. So shield those is a really good idea. Obviously you don't have to shield the tank, he's probably fine, but I do it anyway. So since this is Tyrannical, I will use a global shielding and then use a global to dispel selectively. I probably won't dispel every single one, or maybe I do. But then also in the spirit of having to re-atone in a Shadow Covenant window, it's not ideal for DPS, but it's often something you need to do because that is your primary responsibility, is keep people alive. So within a Shadow Covenant window, casting a Radiance is not a bad idea. Or if you have to, like right here, use a shield after your first penance. So I'm in my window, I drop my first huge penance, buffs my shield, I break from DPS just to cover myself, and then go right back to what I was doing. And I think without fail, exiting a Shadow Covenant window, you should always drop a shield. And I think that will really maximize on this build, really maximize on 4-piece. And shields buffed by Dark Reprimand and Shadow Covenant are going to be the best you can do. Gosh, my PI uptime is just so terrible. I'm so happy I moved it. Being up there next to my Shadow of Death was not the right thing. So I think I have a little bit of loss on this window. Okay, I did get 4 torments, so that's good. But I think I dropped one or both pen eyes. So things are getting a little bit tricky with all these mechanics. I tried to shield him, it didn't work. So trying to farm my Mindbender back real quick. We don't need a barrier, but it's not a bad idea just to cooldown dump for comfort. And perhaps that was the right call, because we all just took a lot of damage. I don't know what that was. So also one thing to note with this fight and bigwigs, I'm really not tracking any bars, but I do track spellcast with sound. So that Dragon Breath, there's an audible. I think it's really important to hear the start of that cast. And that was Algeth'ar's Academy 21. So it was pretty excellent overall. That was 2700 plus 8. Overall damage 26,000 per second. And here's a flash of my DPS profile. So Purge the Wicked is always incredible. Escapable Torments with the 5th pickup with the Shadow of Death are great. Dark Reprimand is at least double that of Penance, showing that it's a really strong spell. And we also see that Mind Blast is a real driver for us for damage and healing. So we got to run that on cooldown. And it's really important to maximize on your torments, picking up your 5th whenever you can. And I think it's really important to build a UI HUD that helps you see your spells in kind of like a prioritized structure. So yeah, that's about it for this key. I'm really excited to keep playing with Discipline. I'm having a lot of fun with it that I didn't expect. This Mindbender build has really changed my opinion of Dragonflight, and I'm so excited to play with it more and get better at it. And playing with Yasmin has been a real treat. Paladins are my favorite type of tank to play with, and he plays his Words of Glory better than any Paladin I've ever played with. So it's a really great pairing. And now that we have buffed his bars to kind of see things through my eyes, I think he will be able to prioritize whom he's healing better. And sometimes it takes a whole system like that just to improve your output slightly. But I think that's what UI is all about. I think that's really fun when it comes to UI. And we've added to his bars ways for him to see my absorbs and ways for him to see my atonements. So I think with that in mind, we might overlap a little bit less. And that will also help us survive better. It'll help my DPS output. It'll help save his resources. So I'm really excited to see how that does in the future. I'm playing with a tank that's really coordinating with what I have in my book and is not pressuring me to go holy. But yeah, that's just about it for this key. I think the biggest takeaways to be a successful disc priest is to always know where your avoidable damage is and take as little as possible, and then to maximize your Shadow Covenant windows with 2 large Dark Reprimand procs and at least 4 torments. And that requires a little bit of a specific rotation, which I don't think is that hard to learn. I think with a little bit of practice on a dummy, you can really make a lot of headway and really maximize this spec. And then I think also you need to have a UI that supports your build. And I've referenced it before, but I think KUI Nameplates is great. I think Dominoes is great for your action bar HUD. And I think Grid2 is what you need as a disc priest to maximize your Rapture. But that being said, I'm really loving playing disc priest again. I've missed Boon for a while, but now that we have this Mindbender, it's mighty fun. And I'm looking forward to some higher keys, better gear, and some more wins. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and until next time, Disc out.